Everybody, it's Anna. Um, I hope somebody shows up and lets me know how my sound is because we know I've gone through maybe 20 minutes before on a live stream before I realized the sound wasn't working. So I'm going to assume the sound's working okay and just start into my topic. If you show up here live or in the replay, let me know you're here and let me know if you have any questions or observations. But today we are talking about the court cards, which I think a lot of people struggle with knowing what to do about. I know that it took me a little while to develop a relationship with the court cards that I felt satisfied with, and it's a relationship that keeps developing actually. So what I want to talk about is there's 4 court cards. There's the page, the knight, the queen, and the king. And I think they're basically there's each of them, they're paired up and they're counters of each other. So I consider the counters to be the page and the king and the queen and the knight. So I want to go through each of the suits and talk about how I see that dynamic playing out. I'll also say that I don't typically use the court cards to represent other people, in part because I don't do readings about what other people think or won't think or what they're going to do, because really it's none of our business what other people think or what they're going to do. I mean, basically a lot of times we say, well, are they going to come back or how do they feel about me? If the person hasn't given you access to that, it's none of your concern. The way I read the cards, when I read the cards, it's really about helping me develop my own insight, my own action plans, and just align myself properly with who I am called to be, and then allowing other people to sort of match that or move away. So I don't use the court cards to warn that someone's coming in or to say, oh, there's a person coming in, but more like as aspects of ourselves in our own relationship. Hi, Angela. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can. Or if you can't, let me know. So what I want to do, thank you, Angela. I need validation now every time because I talked for probably 30 minutes one time when someone said, your sound's not working. So yes. So again, let me know if you're here, if you have any particular questions about the court cards, I can answer, or anything that you want to ask. So we're going to start with pentacles. So pentacles are connected to the physical realms. They're about jobs and money, things you learn how to do in the physical world or experiences we have in the physical world. So we're going to start with the page and the king, who I think are not counters, partners to each other. How about that? So the page is the youngster. That's the student, the one who's learning. So if you think about, you're starting a new job, you're taking on a new hobby, you're learning a new skill, or maybe you're making money, or you're learning how to work with money, how to find balance in your life. That's the page, learning how to do something new. So we're expanding our experience, starting to kind of dip our toes into something in the world. And the king is that energy of mastery, when we have learned how to do it. Like we've done it for a while. We figured out the right combination of rest and movement, engagement. We know the balance points. It's really important in the physical world to find balance points, because the physical world is challenged with rules and laws like density and gravity, and we live in physical bodies which are not spiritual bodies, so they do need to rest, they need to eat, they need to move, they need to do all kinds of things. So the king is the mastery energy. So if you think about the page and the king, you're always sort of moving back and forth between these energies, hopefully, in your spiritual journey, because it's almost like the page is the beginning point, the king is the ending point, and then you start a new piece of learning, and so you go back to the page, right? So we want to keep kind of moving back and forth between the page and the king. Okay, so that's the page and the king, and we also have the queen and the knight, and they're counterpoints of each other. Counterpoints, partners. I keep saying like counterpoints like they're enemies of each other. They're not. So the queen energy is so I think the queen is being connected to feminine energy, and the knight is connected to masculine energy, not in terms of gender, but in terms of spirituality. So feminine spirituality is receptive and kind of quiet and still, and also makes room for inspiration to come in. So you have to kind of go slow, relax, be quiet in order for this energy to come in. So this queen, you can see she's sitting here in her throne. She's got this little rabbit here, which is the sign of fertility. So she is sort of this this sort of broadening the experience or opening the experience of the physical world. So she's going to be very good at, I think of the Queen of Pentacles as being like a lovely comforting energy. Like she knows how to make good food and make things, knows how to prepare a room a certain way, knows how to make people feel comfortable and happy in themselves, because she knows how to evoke newness and vitality in the physical world. And the Knight of Pentacles is the action taker. The Knight is always the action taker, which is why it's masculine energy, because the masculine energy is mind energy. It's the part of us that does things in the world, right? The mind is part of us that interacts with the physical world regularly and has action steps and strategies and things like that. So this guy, the Knight of Pentacles, is a farmer energy. So he's the guy that, like, in fact, he's on his horse. These are all women. I'm referring to them as masculine and feminine, but that doesn't mean man and male and female, right? I mean, all of these, this is a modern witch tarot. I think all of the people here are females. But anyway, this is a masculine energy and has just finished tilling the garden. So what I love about the Knight of Pentacles, he's very stable, very, very, consistent, because if you want to build things in the physical world, you need consistent, regular action steps, right? But you have to balance it, right? You have to have these sort of consistent action steps and also space for this sort of actually, I think of her as being kind of Nine of Pentacles energy, like this sort of walking in the garden, enjoying what you're doing, sort of agreeing with what's beautiful and bringing more beauty into the world. So he's basically planting the garden that she has determined she wants to plant. So you have to go back and forth. And interestingly enough, I think that the King energy comes from learning how to marry these two. You got the feminine and the masculine. We need them to partner together to make things work. The King is the one that has figured out, okay, we need to rest so long. We need to listen for inspiration so long. We need to take action. Like the King is the one that sort of figures out how to create sustainable action in the physical world. So that's my little story with these four guys. Moving on to Swords. Swords is the mind, right? So it's about ideas, beliefs, strategies. And the mind kind of comes online for us as human beings about at 14, where we're kind of getting into high school if you're in that system. The idea of you're starting to your mind is starting to engage the world and create structures and strategies, and also creating meaning, because the mind needs some kind of rubric, right, to make sense of. So we've got the Page and the King once again. Oh, hi, Madam Amy. Page of Swords, again, the student. This is someone who's probably just learning. Like you're learning a new concept, a new way of thinking, a new philosophy, right? There's going to be a lot of studying here in education, right? Because you're trying to maybe see the world in a new way, or gain new stories. That's the idea behind the Page. The King of Swords is like the one who sort of really understands his tools. He's a great strategist. Basically, the King of Swords is like, where do you want to get? I will create a map to get you there. So once again, we have the Page of Swords sort of stepping into something, learning it, opening their mind, broadening their mind to receive something new. And the King of Swords, who now has acquired this tool, utilized it, knows how to make it work for him. And once again, we've got this going back and forth. This is actually really important. I think the mind can often enjoy so much being masterful about a certain tool that it ends up sticking to it and doesn't ever go back to the Page of Swords. So we really have to encourage our mind to stay adventurous. Like this is a really great energy. It's fun to expand the mind. It's fun to challenge ourselves and sort of turn things upside down and see what's possible up in the different way, seeing things in a different way. But we have to help the mind. This is a very adventurous energy. Like, yeah, my mind is ready. I'm kind of open and excited about what is possible. The problem with the King, or the possible problem with the King energy, not the good King, but I mean, not a healthy King energy, but I think in the human mind, is that we tend to just really enjoy being able to use our tools. And then when it's time for us to learn a new tool, we don't want to learn it. So I think I said earlier, I've said it a couple times this week, but actually it's come up a couple times with my husband. So maybe I've only mentioned it once here, but it's the idea. My husband keeps talking about the difference between being spiritual and religious. And of course, he's a minister, right? So he's like, people say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And he's acting as though that's a problem. I would agree that there is a problem. I can unpack that. There is a problem with that, but not the problem he thinks. And that is, spiritual means to me is I'll go on to the Knight of Swords, because I think this connects with these guys, the Knight and the Queen of Swords, right? Spirit is about the feminine energy, which is new things are brought in, inspiration is brought in. The feminine is discerning and creative and evokes new energy. The masculine takes action based on what it already knows or based on how it is being led, right? So spirit is connected to the feminine, religion is connected to the masculine. It's about the structures. So masculine energy is about the structures and the belief systems and the paradigms, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Every mind does. If you don't have some kind of structure, then the mind gets very, very lost, right? Because the mind doesn't understand what you're doing. Like your mind has to tell stories and make sense of what you're doing, or it can't be a proper partner, right? Like this night, right? Like tearing off across the field, like, okay, I know where I'm going. I'm going to go after that quest, kill that dragon, whatever it is he's doing. He's gotten instruction of what he needs to do, right? Because the feminine has evoked the message, has evoked the calling. And so the problem comes when these are separated or they're not working together. And that's when you get spirituality, in the case of the queen, in the case of feminine, spirituality with no structure, which means there's a great idea, great energy, beautiful things are trying to come up, but there's no way for it to enter into the world because there's no structure around it. Or you have religion or structure with no spirituality, and it just becomes a dry structure that it's sort of an old structure. Like I was saying, that it's like you've got the King of Swords that I mentioned before is this master of an old tool, but maybe the tool doesn't apply anymore. Maybe it's gotten stagnant and old, and it's not staying vital. It's not shifting enough to make room for the spirit. So in this case, we've got the Queen and Knight. The Queen energy, the Queen of Swords, I think of her as being an energy. She sits there with her hand outstretched and her sword up. She's ready to cut us free from old stuff. And I think she's cutting us free from old tools that we don't need anymore. We've already mastered them. We've already figured them out. Now we need to move on to something else. And these old tools, our attachment to the old tools is keeping us stuck, right? So I think she's the feminine mind, the feminine spirituality of the mind. And the Knight of Swords is the one that's waiting to get clarity on what she wants him to do. That's when they're working as partners. When one of them isn't working properly, then you start having difficulty in the partnership. But again, there's that. And then of course we have the King of Swords, right? Who is the arbiter between these two, right? He's the master that knows when it's time to access the feminine and the masculine, bring them into partnership, bring them into harmony, so that, because the king's job is to help us accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, to help us develop strategies to make that happen. So, and then once he's done, we go back and learn something new. There's a passage in the Bible that I think it's Paul talking, who says, be transformed of your mind. And the idea is your mind does need constant transformation. If you're in the spiritual path, that's similar to ones that most of my clients lead, which is, it is always expansive. Once you get done with this thing, you don't just continue to repeat that same thing over and over again. It's time to break forth into something else. And we want the mind to get used to that. Like as soon as you've got it, as soon as I just put him down. As soon as the king has accomplished his goal, we got to go back to the page and start learning something new. So we don't really want the mind to think that mastery is a virtue. Mastery is just a part of the journey. We've accomplished it, and now we're going to let it go and start something new. So, okay, so now we'll move on to cups. Any questions? Feel free to ask, or any observations. Cups are about the heart, the intuition, connecting with others, feeling emotionally, emotionally fulfilled. And again, we got the counterparts of the page and the king. And this one does have the page, and the Rider Waite, you can see it a little better, but there's a little, little nose of a fish popping up out of her cup. So I think of the page as like learning how to listen to that intuitive voice and trusting it and believing it and stepping into it, right? And that's something you have to learn. You have to learn and try and say, well, I feel like I want to do this thing, but it's a little bit weird. I'm not sure I can explain it. Well, I guess I'm going to do it anyway. I just feel like it's the right thing to do. So that is the page sort of stepping into that experience of following intuition. And it also is, whether you experience it in the body or the mind or the heart, it is an emotional experience. It's about feelings, right? We can experience that in different ways, but the intuition really does speak to us at a feeling level. And so we begin to listen. We learn the compass of our feelings by listening to it, by listening to our heart or our intuition. Now, the King of Cups here, this pretty much depicts it, that this king is sitting on the throne, on the sea, and the sea is rocky, but the king is staying stable. Basically saying the king has learned how to navigate all of these messages, these emotional experiences. Sometimes it can be very rocky, very scary, very big. Learning how to not be afraid of them, but trusting them, that every time we get that emotional hit, it might be confused and we might have big reactions to it. I mean, we're often asked by the intuition to step into faith and to do things that seem pretty scary. And so, if we're not comfortable with being uncomfortable, if we're not comfortable with being uncomfortable, if we're not if we don't feel masterful about that, we might avoid the emotional experience of that, right? But this king is basically saying, yeah, I understand it. I understand the feelings of overwhelm and anxiety. I understand how to relax them, how to bring them to a place of peace and presence, and also learn to kind of discern the message behind them, so we can get more and more anchored in intuitive wisdom. So that's how they, and of course, again, you're going to go back and forth. As soon as you get mastery in one area, you're liable to start back over with the Page of Cups, which is, I connect the page to the Ace of Cups, right? And the Ace of Cups is that cup facing heaven in the Rider-Waite, facing heaven and like expanding itself to receive even more love, even more connection. So the goal of the spiritual journey is to continually expand so that we become a bigger and bigger vessel for unconditional love, for our own sakes and for the sake of the world. So as soon as you get nice and full, and you're settled in, and you're really following your intuition really confidently, then it's like, okay, let's up the ante. And then you start back over with that page energy, beginning again, a new expansion point, and finding mastery there. And the Knight and Queen of Cups. Here these guys are. So the Queen of Cups, I love her. She's basically healing. I think of her as the healing feminine, right? She sits at the seashore, holding her cup, inviting people to come to her, inviting you to bring who you are, being hospitable to the emotional experience of others and connecting to others. And I think of her as being like a healing energy for the world, really. I don't think they have it in this one, but in the Rider-Waite, there's a group of like jewels at her feet. And I always think of her as sort of alchemizing energy. So she welcomes in heartbreak and pain and sorrow and fear, and she kind of lets it flow into her heart. And from that place, she's able to distill beauty and connection and gems. That's what I think the gems represent, that ability to alchemize that. So she is kind of she's a flow through which she's a vessel through which everything flows and beauty comes out. And the Knight of Cups is the lover knight, right? He's out in the world writing poems and creating art and planting, picking flowers and planting flowers. And I think of him as the one in the world with his heart on his sleeve, just very much expressing with an uncensored heart his love of others, his love of the world, and evoking beauty as he creates beauty, expecting beauty, appreciating beauty, and evoking beauty. So you can see how these work together. She is sitting still as the feminine does and receiving and sort of alchemizing, and he is moving forward in the world with that heart in motion, sharing it with others. So again, that's the masculine and the feminine spirituality, which we all have both, right? We all have the masculine and the feminine. It's always about us learning how to bring them into partnership so that we can gain mastery, which again is the king. Sandra says, what advice does the Page of Cups have if drawn as advice card? Well, that could be that as an advice, it could be that, your intuition is trying to talk to you, like just being very mindful that there's messages coming up, really paying attention to however your intuition talks to you. Like I say before, like there's usually people who are interested in what I'm doing are either body or heart intuitives, which means your intuition speaks to you most clearly through an emotional state or through a physical state, right? And physical could be like your body is talking to you. Literally, your body's talking to you. Now, I'm a heart intuitive, so I don't have that experience, but I've worked with a lot of body intuitives who say their bodies will sort of pull forward or pull out. And the same with the heart intuitive. You'll feel like sparkles. You'll feel excited. You'll feel joyful, or you'll feel exhilarated. So basically, like paying attention to when that language is popping up for you and leaning into it without asking why, without asking too many questions, without analyzing it. Like that little fish is popping up with the Page of Cups. There it is. It's like, yeah, why are you listening to a fish? It seems a little bit crazy, a little bit a little bit strange, right? Why would you listen to a fish? Because that's how the intuition talks. It doesn't talk in logical ways. It's coming from a new place. So there just may be some kind of thrumming in your world where something's trying to, your intuition's trying to create a new place of expansion. So just kind of paying attention to it, and then not just paying attention to it, but actually letting it guide you. So whatever that means as far as action steps. Then once you can hear the message, then you start kind of navigating again the Queen and Knight of Cups, right? We're doing the Queen and Knight of Cups, right? Yeah, both cups. The Queen and Knight of Cups, where now we're sort of listening further, kind of letting flow, moving out. Like this idea of now we're starting to take the path that is opening up due to that inspiration. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. And finally, we've got the Wands, which is about passion and inspiration and really energy in the body. Hi, Madeline. Thanks for being here. Okay. So once again, we've got the Page and the King, because I think of them as answers to each other, right? You go back and forth between the Page and the King, and this is the Wands. So the Page is that student energy. It really is kind of like in the Wands, it's kind of like someone's just kind of following their bliss, like excited and following their energy and trusting their energy to open up for them. So they're looking for places where they can feel more vital, feel more free, feel more in flow. And so that might be it could be anything really. It could be anything towards like creative expression, or it could just be like traveling. It could be eating good foods. There's so many things that we don't think of as necessarily being Wands energy. Anything that makes your body thrum or makes you feel excited. So you're looking for those sort of physical yearnings. This is actually, I think of Wands as being very connected oftentimes by body intuitives, because it is like a physical experience that they have when they're feeling vital and feeling free. So that may be what the Page is. It's about getting freer, like investing more in feeling happy, feeling good, looking to be freer. And the King of Wands is the one who has mastered his passion, right? He fully embodies it. He's in full flow. And he's also, he's the master, right? So he's also like, he is in such full flow. He's able to, so this is the beginning of the embodiment. This is the completion of the embodiment. And so I think of the King of Wands as being very strong leadership energy. He's also one who kind of is a vortex of passion that inspires others. So it's not just he's doing his own thing and sort of living into his own mastery, but as is always the case with spiritual journeys, we're connected to others. So as we move forward in our mastery, so do others. So he's a very lively, bright energy. And the Queen of Wands and the Knight of Wands, again, masculine and feminine. The Queen, and you'll see this, the Knight is always on a horse going somewhere. Right? So that's how you can tell they're in movement. The Knight is about movement. The masculine energy is the mind, taking steps, doing things in the world. The feminine energy is being still and sort of embodying the inspiration of her card. So the inspiration of Wands is about passion and light and warmth. And the Queen is sitting there kind of emanating that energy. So she is really feeling good. And I think that's really important for the Queen, to feel really alive and good. And so we want to, and I also think I think the Wands have a lot of visibility issues, because when you're in passion and you're on fire and you're lit up, everyone can see you, and you just have to get okay with that. So that's part of the challenge of the Wands, is you are following your own inspiration. You're excited. It is going to be visible. So the Queen is sort of, to me, like settling into the visibility of being light and warmth and brilliant in the world and letting people come close to you. So I think the Queen really is about sort of settling into our brilliance. And the Knight is about carrying the brilliance forward. What does it look like? What does it feel like to be on fire? What does it look like to be on fire? And so again, these are working together, and that's what we want. We want the inspiration to come up and then the actions to follow, and for them to be connected, because that is how we achieve mastery. Is the King knowing when to rest, when to move, when to sit in inspiration, when to act on inspiration. That's how we create sustainable spiritual journeys that get us to mastery. And then of course you go back and start over again with the Page. So I'll look at some of these comments. Oh, first pronunciation was correct. Oh, good. for Madeline. Um, my dad often comes up as King of Wands, and that's very accurate. Cool. Um, and Sandra says, "Are knights indicative of movement?" Yes, they're indicative of taking action. And that's why I could connect them to like the masculine energy, because masculine energy in the spiritual world is connected to the mind. So the mind is the part of us that is doing things. It's the part of us that knows how to. I mean, it's controlling our bodies, right? It's controlling our bodies. It's controlling our mind. It's controlling our actions. It's making plans. So it's the part of us. So that's why often when people talk about they get paralyzed, like they have inspiration, but they're getting paralyzed, they can't move forward. It's because the mind is not on board. Like either the mind's confused, it doesn't understand what you're asking it to do, it doesn't understand why you're asking it to do it. It's feeling nervous. Like when you get into that paralysis state, it's because this partnership is not functioning for some reason. And so that's so learning how to bring those two into balance, the knight and the queen, is where we find our mastery. So that is ultimately when we are able to do that, we have the inspiration and the structure are now coming together and functioning in a really powerful way. We now have mastery. And so, like, for example, I was talking about spirituality and religion, right? So I know religion evokes for people the idea of the church. So it's not, religion's just a structure, right? It's just a structure in which we can understand and experience the holy. The problem with religion most of us have is that it becomes just a structure and there's no room for new flow of the spirit, right? So it becomes a dead structure because it's become so committed to being a structure that it's no longer committed to evolving, right? Like we're in the king position, we don't want to go into the page. It doesn't want to be transformed. It wants to sit still. But like, for example, in my business, I had this inspiration. I took a class on the tarot, I became certified in the tarot. I was like, how can I make this work? Right. So I had this idea. And then my mind came in and said, what if we did this structure? My mind began offering structures. What about this as a fee plan? What about this as what we do? What about the process we do when someone reaches out to us? How do we what's the process flow? How do we do this? When do we do this? So my mind is evoking a structure that will match what my inspirations ask for. And when that structure works, and it's still working, I've been doing it this way for a while. So my mind hit on a structure that is responsive to my inspiration, but it's not restrictive of the inspiration. So if something changes, if my inspiration wants to do something different, my mind has to release that structure and try something new. So everything is about the flow or the connection between the inspiration and the action steps, and bringing the two of them into partnership, to me, is the critical piece of the spiritual journey, which most people, at least my clients, most people have never done, because we kind of have the inspiration, we have the feminine and the masculine almost as opposed to each other. The mind and inspiration, our intuition, are sort of at odds with each other, and they kind of are, because they don't understand each other. And the mind is trying to follow the guidance of the world it's been given from other people, and it doesn't yet know to shift its loyalty from their authority to the authority of intuition. So we have to kind of consciously help the mind shift its locus of authority to the intuition. And I think that's, once you start doing that, things get a lot easier. So Madam Amy says, so when you read court cards, does the way they're facing make a difference? I mean, you can't, people will say there's different things. Yeah. Some people will do the right left thing. I kind of don't pay attention to that. So if it makes sense to you, I think that looking to the, looking to the right, let me pull it up. So it's the Queen of Cups. I have to do it this way, right? She's looking to the left, which is, I think, supposed to be looking back, maybe. In the Page of Wands, looking to the right. So that's looking forward. So there could be something to that. I tend to forget about that part. But yes, you definitely can read. You can, anything in the tarot, everything in the tarot is very deliberate. So any piece of something that you catch onto, definitely spend some time letting it, unpacking it, letting it settle, and see if that becomes the part of how the tarot speaks to you, your language with the tarot. Absolutely. Let's see. So, and does that mean the Queen King symbolize rest and standing still because we have arrived? Well, the queens, I think, I connect the queens to feminine spirituality, and there's a stillness to feminine spirituality, right? Like that is when we talk about the major arcana, how we take action, then there's rest. The resting, the integration where the work goes underground, and that is the feminine aspect. So the feminine aspect is not moving forward, it's settling in and like letting things integrate, letting things come to fruition, letting things germinate. So if you're going to, for a sustainable spiritual journey, you have to have both things in balance, the feminine and masculine. The masculine tends to be the mind saying, how are we going to do it? Right? What are we going to do? What is the plan? That tends to be the masculine approach. And the feminine approach tends to be stability. Now, in the king situation, it's like, yeah, they've arrived. Like they figured it out. They know how to find the balance points. They know how to make things happen. They're no longer learning. They're actually, the work is sort of completed in the kings, which is why you got to go back and start with the page. Eventually, and actually for me, it happens really quickly. As soon as I come to mastery, I'm like, yes, I've got it. Then it's like, my intuition's like, yeah, well, now we're going to do something else. And my mind's like, oh, for one glorious minute, I had mastery. And now I'm back to being a student. So, my mind, we've done it so many times that my mind has sort of agreed, this is just what we're going to do. So, not gripe at it too much. So, Madam Amy said, I just thought I would see if I'm looking in too deep. No, I think that makes sense. Absolutely. Anything that you notice in the cards, you pay attention to, because that is your intuition. That's the little fish popping up saying, hey, pay attention to this, because that's going to become part of your language. So just because it's not part of my language is not. A lot of people will look at the colors too. Like the tarot has lots of colors, and I'll notice them sometimes, but it's not really central to how I read. But absolutely, anything that gets your attention, anything that evokes a story or evokes a memory, anything that you get, you pay attention to, because that's the way, that's going to be part of your language of reading tarot. Angie. So, she said, Angie said, I love your insights. I grew up a PK. Yes. My son yesterday, he was, he's a double PK, right? Because both my husband and I are ordained ministers. And he was talking to someone on the computer. He was home they sent him home early because we had some bad weather. And I heard him talking on the computer with some friend, and he was saying something about religion. He was really funny. And Clint said, that's a PK right there. It was something like, well, I'm gonna tell you what I don't like about religion. And anyway, it was really funny because PKs have a certain, he's got it from both sides. So, but they have a certain perspective that makes them intriguing. So I'm going to stop for now. I'm kind of getting over a cold. So, I hope you could have heard me. I've been pretty clear, and feel free, obviously, to keep sharing after the stream is over if you want to ask more questions or offer your perspective. Like Madam Amy said, that she's looking at the direction they're facing. Like, that's a really great insight. That may be helpful. Someone else may go, yeah, that makes sense to me too. So feel free to share how you respond to the tarot and what really stands out for you, because it's good for you to do that. It's good to say, because that's helping the mind sort of lock in, like, okay, we're going to pay attention. It helps the mind develop its meaning. And also it helps other people because we're all learning together. So anyway, well, I'm going to stop for now. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll hopefully see you for our next live stream next week when we're going to be doing the new moon. See you then. Bye.